today we're coming from my room, my very, very special room, Jenny Moon Bears and Restorations. You'll find me on Facebook, and I've got a website, which I'll add all the links in at the end. But this room is a room of a bygone era. It's a bit like a museum. The only difference is that you're allowed to touch things, and the kids come in here and we get crafty and we do stuff together. I'm very, very old-fashioned. I don't like anything new. In fact, I don't even have a mobile phone. I use Nick's mobile phone, hence the reason this is how I'm filming now. I like to keep things as simple in life as possible, and create magic. And one of the ways I create magic is by restoring old toys, like this lovely bear here. He came to me from Budapest and he's been restored now. And I look for anything old, anything that's much loved, anything that once would have meant something to someone, and I give it its life back and its pride back. And if it doesn't go home because it's been sent to me to restore, it will stay with me in my menagerie, my collection of magical bygone things that I will show you around my room. It's another level of mad, but it's beautiful and I love it. And I could spend hours in here if I had hours, which obviously I don't with the horses and the children and the new baby and everything else we've got going on. But we do as a family try and use the room to come and just sit in, and it's like going back to your gran's. And I think that's probably really where I've got my ideas from. It is like walking into my granny's house, and you know, the old Singer sewing machines, there's teddy bears everywhere, there's old cups and saucers and shoes, little tiny kids shoes, and everything. Anything I can find that would have once been loved is in my room. I believe that everything has an energy, and I believe that those energies, if you put them all in one place, can create a really magical space. And there's not been one person that's walked into this room that hasn't gone wow and almost been a bit tearful, because it's a truly incredible place, and the energy that flows through here is equally as incredible, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to give you a tour, and I'm going to take you around and show you all the funny little things that I've collected over the years, and I'm lucky enough to live here and have this room to be able to put it all and have it all on display, and for myself and the kids and Nick to enjoy, and to anyone that comes and visits us, they spend a majority of the time just sitting in here. We just sit in here and drink tea. So yeah, it's a really, really lovely place, and I'm looking forward to showing you around. So, teddy bears. I don't think there's one person on earth that doesn't love or have a connection with a teddy bear. And for me, they are a real tangible link to the past, especially when they're as old as this chap here, and the beautiful Steiff bears that have been made, and the bears that you collect and you see that were once loved, and you imagine the child that held them or got them at Christmas, or all the stories that could have gone with a bear, you know, going through the world wars, that bear was the one thing that was a friend to the person that had it, be a child or an adult. You know, bears are very, very special, and once you start restoring them and you start having people bring their bears to you, it's like they're giving you their child, and the pressure to make sure their child goes back okay is quite intense, but I love it, and I believe that my absolute love for these bears, I would never risk one. I do everything in my power to make sure that they go back to their owners restored and not ruined, and given a new life so they can go on through the next generations. It's taken a long time studying and learning how to restore a bear, lots of reading and trial and error, taking on bears that I buy and put them together. And I found that I had a real gift for it, and I just seemed to be able to do it. And I don't know why. I never thought in a million years I would be a teddy bear restorer once I moved to France, but I am, and it's great. It's one of those things that gives you a real buzz when you've done it, and when the owners come and collect them and you see their faces, it's just the most magical moment. It really, really is. I just wanted to tell you a bit about the teddy bear and where they've come from. I'm sure you all know, Margaret Steiff is one of the very first people that created the teddy bear. Born in 1847, she contracted polio at about the age of about 10 or 11, I think. And very sadly, it put her in a wheelchair because she lost use of both of her legs, and she ended up finding it very difficult to use her right arm. In 1880, she decided to make a small elephant from a very simple pattern. And that was the first official Steiff. You can't call it a bear because it wasn't a bear, it was an elephant. But it's Steiff soft toy. And she went on to create Steiff soft elephants from that point and became quite successful and quite well known off of the back of this particular elephant. Now, the story of how the teddy bear actually came about is really quite interesting, and some of you may know it and some of you may not. So I will tell you just quickly, just so you get an idea of how mad this story really is. President Theodore Roosevelt was out on a game shoot and he didn't catch any game or bears or what they'd gone out to shoot. So one of his advisors went and caught a black bear and tied it to a tree. And so President Roosevelt could actually shoot something. He suggested that he shoot the bear. But President Theodore Roosevelt decided that this was not good practice. It wasn't something he should do. You know, it wasn't a sport. The poor bear was tied to a tree. So he opted out of shooting the bear. He decided not to shoot the bear, and the bear was released and he went home. President Theodore Roosevelt was actually known as Teddy. And because of what he'd done, it hit the press and went into the papers, and in America it was a huge, huge story. And they decided to create a teddy bear, well, a bear, now the teddy bear, to mark this amazing thing that he had done and sparing the life of this lovely bear, and it was now running free. And they created the teddy bear. It was Maurice Mitchum in the early 1900s that created the first teddy bear, but at the same time Margaret Steiff was doing a very similar thing in creating bears. So there's a bit of, some people say it was Maurice Mitchum, some people say it was Margaret Steiff. You can't really tell, but there was, at that time, there was, you know, it's not like you could just ring them up and ask. The communication was very distant, so they were not in a position to just clarify who made the bear first. So I'm going to go with that they both made the bear first. And more importantly, that the little bear that was tied to a tree got away. And I'd like to thank Theodore Roosevelt for doing that, because being an animal lover, the thought of that poor bear being shot would be very bad. But as it turns out, he, off the back of it, has created something that I now work with on a daily basis, and millions and millions of people all over the world take love from these incredibly soft, beautiful little bears. And yeah, I look forward to entertaining you with all my bear stories and some of the restorations that I have got here. And more importantly, a very special restoration that you saw me pick up when I went to Pompadour with the family. I'm going to actually show you how I'm going to restore him and show you how it's done. So I'm looking forward to doing that too. So we will go and see him. Okay, so here we are. He's named Pompadour, which I felt was the right name for him, given where we brought him from. This bear is a fully jointed bear. He's got to be 100 years old. He's an early bear. He's filled with stuffing, elixir, and I would imagine a bit of kapok, but until I open him up, I won't know. Routinely, I wouldn't open a bear unless it needs opening. He needs opening because he has a growler, which I can hear inside, and I think it might give me an idea of the maker, hopefully, but if not, I can fix the growler and give him back his growl. So we're only going to open his back, take out the growler and see if we can fix it and see if we can identify him from it. The other thing is, he does actually, on his back of his neck, he has a small tag just here. Steiff are renowned for their silver buttons, but they're normally in the ear. You don't find them on the back of the bear. So this is a mystery I've actually been asking about, and no one seems to know where this bear's come from. It seems to read on the actual tag Olympic. So I'm not going to over restore this bear because I don't know his true value, and I don't actually know where he has come from. So what we want to do is want to very sympathetically restore him and give him back his natural look, which isn't this. So the first thing I can tell you is his nose is not his original nose, and underneath there's a very slight remnants of what would have been his original nose. So I will be able to find the stitching to recreate this nose. His eyes are plastic, so they're definitely not his original eyes. He would have had glass eyes. I would imagine boot button eyes, which I have, so we will give him back his eyes. More importantly, he's lost his ears, as you can see, and some very clever person has created ears by pushing the stuffing down and then putting two very hard stitches in to give him this dip, to give him ears. So I'm really looking forward to actually taking those out and giving him back some ears, because I think he will change considerably once he's got his natural ears, his black eyes and his little black nose back on again. His face has changed in shape because where they've pushed the stuffing down, his face has changed. So you can see here, I should imagine his nose is going to be quite a lot longer once I've managed to restuff his head slightly, which I'm going to do. And I'm hoping through, there's one of the eyes here is coming off and there's a tiny little hole. So I will use kapok to recreate the shape of his face. Kapok's a very, very soft, is a natural substance. It's actually from the kapok tree. It's the seed. It's very much like dandelion seeds, is about the only way I can describe it. It's terrible. It gets in your nose and in your eyes, makes you itch for hours. But it's amazing, and it's a traditional stuffing for a bear. So I'm going to use kapok to try and give him back his features without actually having to take him apart. Because as I say, I don't want to take him apart because I don't know enough about him. So I will give him back his original features and give him back all of his claws, which have come off, and then leave him, give him a clean and leave him until we find out exactly who he is and you know, his value, because at the moment I don't know, and I wouldn't want to ruin something that, you know, potentially could be valuable. He may have no value at all, but you know, until I know for sure, I'm not going to do too much more. What I would normally do, and the reason I'm not going to do it with this, if this bear came to me and it was just purely coming for a private owner that just wanted the bear restored to last, they weren't interested in the value of the bear, they just wanted the bear to last. So once I find out his value and whether, you know, he could have a little bit more intensive surgery, I won't do anything. But if he came to me and the owner just wanted him to last, what I like to do is take out the stuffing in the actual body itself, go through it, check that there isn't any usually horrible little critters or moths or all sorts of things like to live in bears, check that it's not got anything like that inside. And then leave his limbs because they're absolutely fine, but restuff his body using a mixture of his original wood wool and some new kapok mixed with lavender, because that will help keep moths at bay, and it also freshens him up a little bit and just gets rid of some of the hard crunchiness in his tummy. That, again, I mean, that would devalue him if he was a valuable bear, but for me, if it's for longevity and it's for generations to have him in the future, and you're not worried about his value, then that would be a suggestion, because I believe that, you know, as they get older, you can smell, I mean, he smells musty, he smells of old wood, you know, he's probably been stored in a shed and he hasn't really had the care he deserved, so they do need freshening up, otherwise you do find that bugs and horrible little things like to live in them, and then once that's happened, it's very, very hard to restore them back to their original cells once they start to get chewed by moths and things. So I find that lavender's a really, really good way. Natural lavender, I've got French lavender and lavender that I grow in the garden and harvest. So I fill him with lavender, kapok and wood wool, and stitch him back up so he doesn't look any different, but he smells amazing. And he's, he'll be ready to go home. But as I say, I've brought him, he's mine. I don't know anything about him, but we'll restore him, give him back his face, and see what he thinks afterwards. So we'll get on to restoring him, and you can watch. Okay, so we've got the bear, and we're now going to open up his back and see what we can see with this growler. I'll just try and get in here, if I can find a stitch. Is there a stitch that we can get? So you have to be really careful, because these bears are so old, that they don't have something called dry rot, which is where the actual fabric is so brittle that it won't take being stitched back up again. So I'm going to make a little tiny hole and just check the fabric out first before I go any further, because what I don't want to do is not be able to stitch him back up. He's got a good strong fabric by the looks of it. So we'll keep going and take the rest of these stitches out. Very early bears were always stitched up on the back. Sometimes you find them on their tummy, but most of the time, well, most of the bears I've done, I'm sure other restorers may have different ideas, but I find that they are stitched up on the back. So I think that's all of them. I'm having trouble keeping the kids out now, because when I'm in here they like to come in and watch. So Rupert's been sitting outside the door asking if he can come in. But it's not as easy when you've got a little person, and I'm going to try and film for you. So okay, so that's as big as the hole is, I think. Not going to get much bigger than that. I think that's got... Let's have another look. No, that is... That's it. So I don't have a lot of space to work with. So you can imagine when they made these bears, it would have been quite hard because the inside they have where they're jointed, they have a disc, like a wooden or a cardboard disc, and then a cotter pin joint. And in here you'd have had to get a set of long nose pliers and twist the cotter pin into like a butterfly shape or a crown shape, depending on how you made bears. Right, so this is the bit where I'm going to take all of this out, and really I should have my mask on, which I'm just going to get, because if I don't, it all goes up my nose and it's not very nice. I'll just grab my mask. See, I was using masks before COVID. Oh. Okay. So I'm just going to pull, so I might be a bit more muffled now. Pull this out. I only want to get to the growler. I'm not interested in taking it all out. Oh, it's very dusty and very, very smelly. Good. Okay, so here's the growler. Let's have a look. Oh, so it's a Millwall growler. And it seems to have, I think it might have been squashed, which is why it's not so smooth. We'll have to look into that one. See, this is why it's really handy having a husband that's very, good at these things. There you go. So I can show you now. So it sits in this cardboard, let me take my mask off. Oh! It sits in this cardboard tube, and obviously the sound comes out here. This weight, so as the bear is sat up and laid down, this weight would close and shut, pushing the air out through the hole, through this, to make that traditional growling noise. And unfortunately, what's happened is, as with most of these bears, this fabric piece here, which creates the bellow, has perished. So we need to, if we're going to use the same growler in the bear, I need to try and make this strong again so it doesn't release any air, because there's little tiny holes in it which will be releasing the air, which obviously is stopping the bellow from working. And traditionally it's covered in chalk, so it helps it slip through the actual container that it goes into. But again, all the chalks come out, so we need to look into that. So that's going to be a little bit of working on it by itself. So I'll leave that to the side so I can get on with that another day and show you what we're going to do with his head. So he's got a nice little hole in there, not that you can see it, where his growler sat for all those years. How lovely, all those people that he would have entertained. And we'll get that going again. And if we can't get it going, I have traditional ones here. So he'll get his sound back. But hopefully we can get his original one going, which would be good. But if not, he will have his sound by the time he's been fully restored. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick clean up before we start on the other bits, and I shall come back and show you what we're going to do. Okay, so we've had a tidy up. His stuffing's in his little basket here, so I don't lose any. And now I'm going to look at removing what's here of his nose. He's covered in glue. Someone has glued a lot of stuff onto him. So it's quite hard to get rid of the glue, especially when you're working with such old fabric, because you don't want to rip the fabric. So you need to be firm but kind. There you go. There's his original nose. So his original nose was actually brown. So we will try and give him back a brown nose. And he's got, I can't see the shape of his mouth sadly, but yeah, he's got, I can roughly see where it was. What's great with these fabrics is where the stitching would have once sat, sometimes you can just make out what sort of shape it would have been. And I think he might have had a little sad face, because here is a bald patch running all the way down. Quite a long mouth. I think he's had a long mouth at some point. But yeah, I think it might be quite a sad mouth. So we will see. Right, and onto these eyes. So turn him round. Let's see what we can do with these. They're stitched in and glued. Someone's done a good job of making sure they weren't going to come out again, that's for sure. What we don't want to do is damage him when trying to take them out, because again you can rip the fabric, so we don't want to rip the fabric. So it's a matter of being very gentle and persuading it to come out rather than forcing it, which sometimes is easier said than done when you've been trying for half an hour to get an eye out. You have to remind yourself that he's a very old boy and he doesn't deserve to be pulled about too much. So these aren't going to be easy to get out, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch you off for a minute, get them out, and then come back. Okay, so it's taken me 20 minutes to get his eyes out. They've been so well glued on, as you can see, there's all glue here. They've been stuck back in. So we're going to replace those. You do feel sad because it's part of his history. Whoever put those eyes in, obviously, you know, tried to keep him looking good for whoever owned him, for the granddaughter or grandson or daughter. But unfortunately, they're damaged and they're stuck on, and they're going to get lost again at some point. So we're better off putting his old traditional eyes back in, and trying to get him to look a little bit more like he would have done when he was first made. Now the next bit's going to be trying to get these ears out, which are equally as tight. We will try. I'm going to put the eyes here out the way and we'll have a look at these. There's been a lot of glue used on this bear. This is all glue to glue his ears in place. So I just need to try, if I can, and get the back of that, all this lump out. It's a big knot, and we can get the shape of his head back, hopefully. It's very hard because you don't want to trim his actual fabric. There you go, there's one. Just there you go. Oh, that must be a relief. Have your head back. Yeah, so the shape of him is will completely change once that's stuffed back up. Okay, we've got one ear out. Just going to move on to the other one. He's got a very handy little hole in here, which I think where his original ears would have been put. You can just sort of see where they sat as well, which we'll use to stuff the kapok in him to give him his shape back on the back of his head here. And then this one, another nice little glue. Oh. Again, trying to pull it out without snipping the actual fabric. It's very nerve-wracking when you're doing this sort of thing because they're so old, and you do wonder as well, like, I do hope that he didn't have ears like this. I'm fairly sure he didn't. They don't seem like the normal teddy bear ears, and they do seem very homemade. But it'd be just my luck he'd be, you know, one of the rarest bears in the world and I've just chopped his ears off. But hopefully that won't be the case, and after all the studying I've done and tried to learn as much as I can about him and ask as many people as I know about him, no one seems to recognise him or these ears. So we're going with, they're not traditional, and we're going to take them out. And the more I'm doing it, the more I'm feeling better because I can see what I think would have been the mark of where his original ears were. So let's see, let's trim this last one and we should have a, that's it. Right, now we should get the shape of his head back. Let's have a look. Oh, that must be like having a really good itch when you've had your hair tied up all day. Wow. Let's have a look. What do you look like now? Oh, you're looking more like a bear. So now we've got the job of stuffing him back out again so he's full, because all this is loose. Obviously, given his age, he's allowed a few wrinkles, a bit of saggy skin, but we'll give him a little bit of a nip and tuck and see if we can make that into a better shaped head for him. And I'll use my, normally, obviously, because I like magic, I stuff my bears using wands. I have a whole collection, I don't know if you can see them over here, of wands that we use to stuff the bears, to add a little bit more magic. But because I've got a tiny little hole to work with, I'm going to have to use a paintbrush. See, I don't go out and buy all the mod gear. I'm going to use the end of a paintbrush to try and shove some kapok into his head and give him back his shape. So I'm going to go and get a paintbrush, get my kapok, get my mask on, and apologise if you can't hear me properly, because obviously I'll have a mask on, so I'm going to be a bit muffled. And we'll see if we can give him back a little bit more shape, and then we can go for adding his eyes and giving him back his nose. And yeah, then we'll give him a little bit of a surface clean and see what we've got. Okay, so we're back with the kapok. This is it. I'm not going to move it too much until I've got my mask on, because it really is horrible stuff. It's amazing for bears, but oh, it just gets everywhere. And it's already got everywhere. I've only just literally picked it up. We can really see it floating around in the air. It's a necessity for this, for old bears. But yeah, it's not the nicest thing to work with. So I'm going to stick my mask on. So if I become a bit muffled, I apologise, but I'll do my best to speak up. And we'll try and get his face back to some sort of shape. Okay. The only thing is you steam up. My glasses are steamed up now, so I can't see what I'm doing. Whew. So I've got a paintbrush here that I chew the end of, because it gives it a little bit of what's the word? So the kapok sticks to it, so I can actually get it to stay on the hole. Alright, we need to find the hole. Where is it? It's only a very tiny hole. There it is. Okay, I'm going to stick my paintbrush in the end of it. There you go. Right, so you can see there's lots of space to be filled in here, which I'm now going to slowly fill. And I'm going to start from the front and work my way back. That's Rupert running overhead in the barn lounge. He's coming down, so I think in a moment we might have a visitor. So I'm back. Rupert wanted an ice pop. Oh, he has one now. So now we're going to try and give this dear boy back some stuffing. So this is a time-consuming job and takes a while, but you'll be quite amazed at how much kapok will go in this bear through this tiny little hole. So I think for this, Nick will probably speed you up so you can see me doing it without having to spend the next 2 hours doing it with me. The joys of modern technology. Okay, so he's had his head stuffed. I'm just going to remove what's left of the kapok off of him. He where he'd had the two eyes put in, there's actually 2 holes, which I think is why he's had eyes glued in. So I can stitch those holes back up and put the new eyes in. But they were very handy to stuff the head without having to actually damage him at all anywhere, because I was able to stuff. It took some time. It took about 40 minutes in total just to get his head stuffed again. But I think it'll be worth it in the end, because he'll look lovely and traditional again. So we'll just get rid of what's left of this kapok on him so I can take my mask off, because otherwise it just gets in my face the whole time. Okay, so I've got rid of the worst of the kapok. He's still floating around, as you can probably see, and it'll be in my eyes for days now. And my mouth. So now it's a matter of stitching the holes. Excuse me, I've got a mouthful of fluff. Stitching the holes and just recreating his face and giving him back his features. His nose was actually skewiff, and it looks like he had quite a large nose, because this is one half of the middle seam. He's got a Y seam that goes up here. So this is one half, the seam's here, so the other half actually is missing. So he's got another whole black bit the same size to go on the other side. And then you can just about see where his mouth was, and here I can just pick out that he had a long mouth that went down in like a triangle. So we'll do that. We'll put in his boot button eyes, and then we will give him some ears. The one thing with working with very old bears, he's trying to match the materials, because obviously you don't want to be putting modern synthetic fluff on a mohair bear. So what I'm going to do is I actually have some stiff mohair here that I'm going to use, and I will show you how I use it to create the older look, so it doesn't look quite so new. And I think it looks like a roughly the same sort of colour. It might not be exact, but it'll be the closest we're going to get for the stuff that I've got here. But we'll give it a go. So now, yeah, I'm just going to stitch his eyes up and pop them in, because that's an important part of giving them back a bit of life. And when they're looking at you, it makes you want to finish. And yeah, we'll go from there. So I'll just grab my eyes and then I shall come back.